Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, I am going to attempt to offer you some tips and pointers to answer a question. And the question is, should you crack a comic book that has been graded and send it in to see if you can get a grade bump? This is a question that I've received from people over the last couple of months, countless times, where people are asking, should I do it? What do you think? Hey, is this something you would do? Is this something that you've done? What has your experience been? What can I expect? Right. And so what I am going to try to do is to offer, again, some things for you to think about as you evaluate whether you should do this, whether you should take a book that you have and send it in. And so I'm going to try to do this in the live format here so that I can actually share my screen with you. So if I make mistakes, hey, you're going to have to pardon me because there are some things that I have to give up, if you will, by doing it this way. But I'm going to offer some practical tips and advice. I'm going to show some examples. We're going to walk through a little bit of methodology here. And my goal is to offer up enough for you to be able to employ this for yourself and to answer the question, does it make sense? That is the overall goal for what we're going to do. Now, I have to put a little bit of a disclaimer on this. And the disclaimer is that I technically have never done this. I've technically never cracked a case or a book and sent it in for the purpose of trying to get a grade bump. I've never done it. I've cracked cases for the purpose of trying to get a signature on a book that was already graded, but I've never taken a book and sent it in. Now, I will tell you that I do have books in my collection that I've purchased, and I've purchased them because I believe that there is potential for those books to get a grade bump by having to be regraded, but I haven't done it. Partly because once I own the book, I feel like I have it and there's plenty of time for me to crack the case and to try to get that grade bump. I already own the book, and so I don't want to tie up additional resources in that specific book when I already own it, when I can take those funds and go out and buy something else. So I want to put that disclaimer out there for you all so as to make everyone aware of, my experiences. But it also I think this speaks to another point of my channel, is that I try to think things through logically. And I think that I've thought this through, even though I haven't done it. I feel like I've thought it through enough to be able to at least create a video to prompt some thoughts on your part. All right. So now that the disclaimers are out of the way, one of the first things that I want to encourage you to do is, if you have a book that you are thinking about sending in, that you do a visual inspection of that comic. And it's a little tough. Like, if you already have the book, it's already been graded, because that's essentially what we're talking about here. You have to do a visual inspection of that comic through the slab to look for pressable defects. Generally, things, and there are videos on my channel that actually can explain the difference between pressable defects and non-pressable defects. Like a spine tick that breaks color is not a pressable defect that can be fixed. The appearance of it can be improved with the press, but you can't feel in, if you will, the color that has been lost by that crack, or a tick, if you will. But a crease, a fold, a bend, these are things that can be, basically eliminated, and at a minimum improved, right? And so if you have a book that has a lot of indentations and waviness and stuff like that, those are pressable defects. If you look on the back side of the book, and the book is supposed to be white, but you're seeing little what appears to be dirt or something like that, that can probably be improved with the clean. Now, at the end of the day, we don't know for a fact, right? Just because it's, until you start to clean a book, you don't know exactly all that's going to come off. But you want to do a visual inspection of the comic and kind of ask yourself, is this a pressable defect or not? How many pressable defects am I actually seeing in this comic through the slab? Because that's going to tell you a lot. Generally speaking, the head grader over at CGC has basically told me you can expect a half grade to a full grade bump if you get a book cleaned and pressed. Now, could it be more? Absolutely. It depends upon how many pressable defects you actually see and also whether that book has already been pressed. So if you're looking at that book and you're not seeing very many pressable defects, then a press might not help you because it may have already been pressed, right? And there is nothing in the grader's notes that will tell you that a book has been pressed before, and there's lots of reasons for that. I've discussed that in videos before, but there's nothing in there that will tell you whether that book has been pressed. If you get the grader's notes, you may be able to read through there, and if it says like crease or gentle crease or finger folds or something like that, those are indicators that maybe there are some pressable defects, but those grader notes, in my opinion, are not as good as just looking at the book. And you get the book, you angle it a certain way, you try to catch the light, and you look for these types of imperfections. And then once you actually get a feel for the number of pressable defects, are there pressable defects, that kind of thing, then you have to do a little bit of dirty grading. So what is the grade on the comic as it exists? Based upon the pressable defects that you are seeing and the defects that can be improved with cleaning, what is your best guess as to what that new grade will be? You want to kind of arrive at that. And there is a video, if you search here on YouTube for Regie Collects Dirty Grading, there is a video that will walk you through that process of how to dirty grade. But really what it is a guesstimation. It is a guesstimation based upon observation and based upon your review of grading criteria as to what that grade actually is. Now, the great thing is you already have the book in the slab, so you have some idea of what the grade should be. And now you're doing your visual inspection and you're dirty grading it based upon that foundation. All right. So I do have an example that I actually want to show you guys. I actually have two, not two examples, but two of the same book. This is a 6.5 of Thor 165. This is the second copy that I bought, but the very first copy that I bought was this one right here. This is Thor 165 of 4.5. Part of the reason why I bought this was that the price was good, but I also noticed when I looked at the photos online, I saw lots of pressable defects in this book. And it's also one of the older CGC cases, which again, is sometimes an indicator that that book may not have been pressed. But when you look at this book, and you will not be able to see this on screen, there are lots of pressable defects throughout this cover. Just little like half-shaped crescent moons, if you will, where it looks like somebody had just opened the cover up, you know, and they are throughout this cover, throughout the cover. And I'll try to at least bring it over a little bit closer so you guys can get a look at it. But there are pressable defects throughout the cover of this book. There are some defects like the tear that you see up at the top right above the H in Thor. That is not a defect that can be corrected with the press. That a great example of some that can and cannot be improved. But on the backside, you can actually see that this book is actually not the cleanest on the backside, not the cleanest. It's a little dingy on the backside, which means that theoretically it could benefit from a little bit of a clean. There's a spot right up at the top middle that I'm not sure if that's going to come off, but in my head, my belief is that it will either be removed and or the appearance of it can be made better, which means that it will affect the grade. So we have a 4.5 with lots of pressable defects on the front and potentially some pressable defects and some cleaning defects on the back side. But when I look at this book, when we talk about dirty grading, we know it's a 4.5, right? But when you compare it to the 6.5, night and day difference. That 4.5, while it can be improved, it has wear on it that cannot be improved on the spine. If you look, there is wear there that cannot be improved with a press. There's some of that stuff like the tear and the wear on the spine that cannot be improved. So it's not going to be a 6.5, but maybe a 5.5, maybe a 6 even. So if we go from a 4.5 to a 6, to a 5.5 or a 6, that's actually not bad. Okay. So the benefit of the visual inspection and the dirty grading goes a long way to being able to guesstimate what the grade of that comic could actually be. Now, with that said, what I want to do is I actually want to go over to Go Collect. And this is why I wanted to share my screen. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go over to Go Collect. And we're actually going to type in Thor 165. 165. All right, so we're going to search for that. Here is the book right here. Let me make sure you guys can actually see that. And you can. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Hopefully this will help people as well. Okay, so make sure that that's good. Yeah, that's good. All right, so this is store 165 right here. We're going to click on this, and then we're going to drill down. And so what you're able to see here is that I'm going to scroll down. So we have right now a 4.5 that is valued at $170. So we should assume that this book is $175. That's what I paid. Let's just assume that. And we expand it. You can see here that the book is going for a little bit more than FMV, 195 here in May. The month before that, 219, 161 before that. So a little bit of some fluctuation there, but the FMV is calculated by Go Collect to be $170. All right. So we assumed that we may be able to get a full grade bump because of the defects that are being seen. So we may be able to go from a book that is $170 to a book that has an FMV of $210. Now, what's interesting about this particular book is that the FMV for the 6.0 and the 5.5 are basically the same. And there's only a $10 difference between the 5.0, which is very weird, right? So you have a 5.0 that is 200, a 5.5 that is 210, and a 6.0 that is 210. But what's interesting is that when you start to dig into the data, the sales data, the numbers look a little bit different. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we expand on the 5.5, because we believe that that's where this book is going to go, you can see that the sales for this book in the last month, well, I should say in May, are $200 and almost $80, $209, $299, which is fascinating, going well above the FMV, if you will, in some cases, right, of $210. Now let's click on the 6. Let's say we have a lucky bounce and we get this 4.5 up to a 6 with a nice clean press. When you expand upon that, what's interesting is that you start to look at these prices, and recently, as of June, the end of June, right into July, the sale price of this book was $204, $199 a few days before. Earlier in June, $319 before that, $225. So the sales data looks a little bit different when you compare it to the FMV, but this is all the stuff that you want to be able to do to evaluate after you do your visual inspection and your dirty grade. What is the FMV of where I believe that book could actually be? That data point is going to be important for you. If you don't have a subscription to Go Collect, if you head over to my website, regiecollects.com, go to my partners page, there is a promo code on that page that will actually get you 30 days access to Go Collect to allow you to do this type of evaluation. And I believe personally that this is extremely helpful. I've had my Go Collect membership for a couple of years now, and it is extremely helpful to me. But what we can see here is that we have a difference. We have a difference in value from $170 to somewhere north, if you will, of $210 based upon the FMV associated with this book, right? So having that information in our back pocket, I think, is really important, because that price difference that we see, if we just do it on the FMVs, that is an important data point. And let me check to make sure I didn't do this beforehand. Okay, so we have our difference between those, right? And let me write myself a note here so I do not forget that point. Okay, all right. So now that we've done that, and we believe again what the grade of the book will be, we know what the value of the book theoretically will be. I want to actually go over to CGC, because now that we know where the book might land in terms of value, we need to look at the cost. Because we're asking ourselves, does it make sense to take this book that has already been graded, crack it open, send it in, and get a new grade, right? So looking at the values is just is one part of the equation. We need more information, right? So we need to look at the cost. What is the cost to actually do this very thing that we are considering? So I'm actually going to share my screen one more time, and we're going to go over to CGC. And we're going to figure out the cost associated with sending this book in. So let's go ahead and do that. So let me make sure that you guys can see that. And I don't know why. Yeah, you can. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and click this to be able to submit this book. And nope, one sec. I need to change my windows because another window opened and you cannot see that window. It's one of the things about the technology. When new windows pop up, you actually lose, it doesn't pop over to the new window. So can you see that? No, let me close that one. Bear with me here, people, as I navigate this thing. So I think this is the one you want. Let me make sure you can see that. You can indeed. All right, so let me make this a little bit bigger. So we're going to go ahead and select comic from the drop down menu. And this is where we're actually going to plug in what this book is. Well, we're going to select the services that we want, right? And so the services that we wanted, we are going to mail this into headquarters. We want to have this book graded. And the question that you kind of have to ask yourself here is around this, the type of pressing, right? So a quick press is really designed for like modern comics that have soft bends and waviness and some of that other kind of stuff. If it requires a lot of work, a quick press is not going to help, but you also have to have a 15 book minimum for the quick press. So we're not going to select that. We're going to select the full press, right? So it removes non-color breaking defects, bends, spine rolls, and dirt. This is the way to go, especially for a book of this comics age. So we're going to set grading and also pressing, scroll it to the top, and we're going to hit the next button. So up here, we're going to plug in some of our information. So this book is Thor. So we're going to select that from the drop down menu. The publisher we know is Marvel. Let me make sure you guys can still see that. You can. Okay, so issue number 169. So you type it in and then you have to click on it from the drop down. That means it's actually pulling it from the database. The issue date is October of 1969. We're not going to change that. And we're just going to put a nominal value in here for declare value. A lot of people ask me about this pre-screen. A lot of folks miss this down at the bottom. So here we are actually going to highlight that the pre-screen is down here. So if you do want to do a pre-screen, and pre-screens can be done at any grade, you actually just toggle that and you can actually do your pre-screen. The other thing is if you're resubmitting, you might want to check this box when technically we are resubmitting this one. So we probably want to check that and have that go through. And we'll talk about that in just a moment, why that's relevant. All right. So we're not going to click it now. We're just going to enter the basic information so that we can get some pricing information. So over here, because of the age of the book, the modern option is grayed out. And the modern option, if this were a modern book, would only be about $16 with about 20 business days turnaround time. Because of the age of this book, because it was released in 1969, it is not considered a modern book. And so you can see the options. The options available to us are not grayed out like the modern. And so I'm just going to go with the value tier at $21.60. This is 27 business days. All right. And it also has to have a value of less than $200, which this book, depending upon which grade we get, could fit into there, right? So it's important to look at the value associated with the tier. Here it is $200. If we go economy, it's a little less time, but you can go up to $400. But for the sake of simple math in my simple mind, we're going to go with the value tier right here. All right. So one other thing that I want to mention to you is that because of the type of membership that I have with CGC, I have a discount. And I believe that the numbers that you're seeing here reflect the discount. I think it's either a 5% or 10% discount that gets applied to my account. So when you do yours, depending upon the membership you get, your numbers may look a little bit different. So I just want to highlight that for you. I typically recommend that people get the premium membership. And I recommend that because that comes with the discount. And it also comes with a $150 credit on your account, which is great because you can use that $150 credit to get a healthy number, well, 5 to 8 books, depending upon the math, graded depending upon what you're sending in, right? So I like having that credit, which gets applied on the back end. You won't see it on your invoice as you go through this process, but it will get applied on the back end before they charge your debit card or credit card or however you choose to do it. Now, if you do decide to get a CGC membership, there is a link in the description of all of my videos. It's an affiliate link. If you would ever be so kind as to click that and go ahead and do your membership, CGC gives a little bit of some credit back to the channel that I use to get books graded, and I send those books in. So again, spirit of transparency. All right, so we're going to go ahead and select the value tier. You have an option of fast tracking this thing, which basically cuts the business days in half. We're not going to pay that $8. We're just going to roll the dice and wait the 27 days, or 27 business days. So we're going to click next. And then over here, what was it? This is the pressing tier. So because we select the value tier on the other side for grading, the pressing tier is automatically set for us, and it's basically 50 business days. So first, you have to do 50 business days with your pressing of the comic. Then you will have your 27 days of grading, and you're going to lose a couple of days as the book is brought in and then, pressed, and then as it transitions and all that kind of stuff. So you're looking at about 70 some odd days, right? Based upon the stated dates on the site here. All right. So the value tier for pressing will cost about $25. So we're going to go ahead and add that to the cart. And what we're going to see here is that roughly our cost to get this done is $46.60. $46.60 to get this book cleaned, pressed, and graded. Now, this does not include the actual shipping. There's going to be some shipping costs to ship these books to CGC, which is not accounted for in what we just talked about. And then there's also some shipping fees to have the book sent back to you. So you could be looking at a couple of bucks, right? Depending upon how you choose to ship out and how you have the book potentially come back. But if you remember from when we looked at the values of a 4.5 was basically $170. The value at that FMV, if you will, at a 5.5 or a 6 was only $210. So we're looking at $40. There's a $40 difference between the two, and it's going to cost $46? $46 to actually get the book graded again, clean, press, and graded, $46. So you have to ask yourself, does it make sense to actually send this book in? Because what you have to remember is that grading is part art, part science. There is the potential for all books to not go up in grade, to potentially come down in grade, right? Depending upon what happens, right? But theoretically, because of the visual inspection that we did in step 1, we've already identified lots of pressable defects that potentially could result in why that book will actually get that grade bump. So I feel pretty comfortable that we're not going to drop in grade. The question is, how high will that grade go is the question. And then what is the cost for getting that grade bump, if you will, right? So the difference in FMV is only about 40 bucks. And on the other side, you're looking at about $50, not including shipping, just to realize the potential grade bump that you're trying for. So the question is, do you send it? Does it actually make sense? And again, if you go beyond the FMV and actually look at the sales prices of those books at a 5.5 and 6.0, you see slightly different numbers there. You see slightly different numbers. So again, it's just a question of what makes sense to do. Are you doing it based upon the FMV or the potential sale? Like, can you go out and buy a 6.0 for less than what it will cost to get that book clean, pressed, graded, and shipped? That's part of the question. And it's just where are you going to find the book? Are you going to eBay where you may have to pay taxes? So there's a lot that goes into it. So when people send me messages and say, hey, should I crack this book and send it in? Well, there's a lot of factors that come into it. What is the age of the book? How many pressable defects do you see? Do you have the money to be able to just buy that book and sell the old book? Like, there's a lot of factors there that have to be considered. It's not a simple yes or no type of question, but this is what you're going to have to ask yourself is, does it make sense to actually send it in? And it might. It might actually make sense to roll the dice and send it in. Again, depending upon that visual inspection, you may decide that it's actually worth it. All right. So hopefully that example, that walkthrough of the methodology makes sense, Because the truth is that you can follow this exact same process for just about any book that you want to do. You're right. You want to do your visual inspection. You want to do your dirty grading. You want to look up the FMV associated with that book, drill into some of that sales data. You want to look at your cost on the other side. What is it going to cost for me to be able to potentially realize this grade? And then do the math. Does it make sense to actually send it in? And while the numbers look a little funny for Thor 165, as we saw the FMV values looked a little funny, they may not look that funny when you start to do this yourself, looking at some of your own books. You may see different, the FMVs more spread out, and you may see some differences with the sales amounts for books. So definitely want to dig into that. One of the other questions that people oftentimes ask me as well is, should I crack the case? Should I crack the book out and then send it in to CGC to have them regrade it? Will there be a bias? Will they have a bias if they're actually looking at this, thinking that it needs to be right back at a 4.5? So there's a lot to that. While those may seem like simple questions, there's actually a lot that goes on with those particular questions. So let's try to break it down. Sending the book back in the case is somewhat recommended because this thing is super secure, right? In the sense that if you were to take this raw book out and you put it in a Gemini shipper and somebody actually dropped it or stepped on it or something like that, there's a potential for the book to be damaged. If you leave it in here, you have a little bit more protection, right? There is the case that is going to offer some type of protection, better than cardboard, right? But of course, you want to wrap this thing in bubble wrap and all that kind of stuff. And there are videos on the channel that actually walk you through it. But this is a really secure way to be able to send the books in, especially if you're shipping them the proper way. So that's like part one. The other part, why you want to do a resubmit option in the field that I showed you, and why you may also want to send it in the case, is so that when CGC gets this book, they have the ability to actually take this book out of the registry, out of the CGC census. They will go ahead and remove it, and then they regrade this book and it gets a new number, and then it goes back into the system. That way we're not double counting the number of Thor 165s out there, where this same book gets counted twice because it was never really removed from the database. Now there's options, right? In my head, you could crack it. You could have someone else clean press it. You could then send that book in with this this logo or the label to CGC, and it may serve the same purpose, right? So that is definitely an option. I'm a big fan of not telling you there's only one way to do it, because there's oftentimes multiple ways. So I at least wanted to kind of offer that up to you guys. All right. So I think there was another point that I was going to make about this. Sending it in the case is definitely something that we wanted to do because of being able to take it out, the physical protection that is offered. I want to say that there was one other thing that I wanted to talk about, but it kind of escapes me at the moment. But again, you know, there are lots of options when it comes to sending your books in. My big thing is take some time to think through what actually makes sense. Take some time to do your own research and to evaluate, you know, is this something that you want to do? Because the easy thing is always to just take it, crack it, send it in, and hope for the best. But you want to do more than hope, right? You want to have a plan. You want to have some comfort and some sense that when you get this thing back, it's actually going to be at a higher grade. That is the goal. And I think, again, if you follow some of the tips and pointers that I've pointed out in this video, I think that it's going to go a long way to actually help you. All right. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this video up. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that it was maybe entertaining and informative, and maybe a little bit of both, a little infotainment. If indeed you did enjoy it, I want to encourage you to leave a comment behind. That way we can mix it up in the comment section. I also want to invite you to hit the thumbs up button, because that's good for the Google algorithm. Wow, I butchered that. It's good for the algorithm. If you guys need to reach out to me, you can actually send me a message on Instagram at Regie Collects. And if you need to send me an email, you can do that as well at Regie@regiecollects.com. Take care.